Well, I knew this day would come when that system would not work right. You wonder why we always have those little bulletins and words in the bulletin and things like that. So, but actually, for 2.5 years, I guess it's been pretty consistent every Sunday morning. That's not really a bad track record for one little computer and one little projector. We're continuing through our, well, I guess you could call it a series, although it wasn't designed to be a series. Going through the books, parts of Genesis, and we come again to Joseph. We heard a little bit about Joseph last week, if you were here. And really, what the story of Joseph is kind of a smaller story of redemption, in a way, within the greater story of redemption that is the whole Bible. You remember, redemption, one of the definitions is to restore to favor. And so we see that happening in this story from Genesis chapter 45. Joseph restores his brothers to favor to himself. He didn't really have to do that, but he does that. This is, keep in mind also, towards the end of, not so much the full story of Joseph. There's a few more chapters about blessing of his children and things like that, and when he dies and all that, but it's getting kind of close. But also keep in mind, this is after 22 years have passed from what we heard last week. Now, if you weren't here last week, or if you don't remember what we covered last week, that was where Joseph was he was sold into slavery. He was sold to some Ishmaelite nomadic traders that were coming through. Joseph had been sent by his father, Jacob, said, go find out what's happening with your brothers. They were out tending to the flock. He went to find out where they were, couldn't find them, was told, they'd gone to Dothan, and he went on to find them there, and that's where his brothers saw him coming, conspired against him to basically kill him. They decided not to kill him. What good is that going to do us if we just kill him? So let's sell him. Let's get a few bucks out of this deal. Sell him to some Ishmaelite traders, and that passage ended saying that Joseph was taken to Egypt. Well, between then and what we read today, just a few moments ago by Chipper, 22 years has gone by. Not a little bit of time. Joseph has gone through some rather harrowing life experiences, and I'm sure you remember them. He was sold to the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites sold him to Potiphar, one of the leaders in Egypt. And Potiphar found that Joseph could really help him. Everything that Joseph touched, God blessed. You know people like that? It just seems like everything they touch just turns to the proverbial, wonderful situation. Well, Joseph was one of those guys, and Potiphar says, okay, I want you to be in charge of everything in my house. And, the Scripture says he was a handsome young man, and Potiphar's wife had some other ideas for things for him to engage in, and Joseph had a high level of integrity, and he ran. And Potiphar's wife accused him of basically assaulting her, and so Potiphar believed his wife. Joseph spent some time in jail. You remember all this. We don't know how long, but it was some time. He ends up interpreting a few dreams by people in jail. One of these guys gets into the company of Pharaoh later on, and he gets out of jail. Pharaoh has these two dreams that are really upsetting him, and he wants an interpretation of them. And this guy that had heard about Joseph in prison said, hey, I heard about it. I know this Hebrew. He's in jail. He can interpret dreams. He comes, and the dreams basically are that, you know the story probably. There's two dreams, and they both say the same thing. There's going to be a famine coming. It's going to last for 7 years, but before the 7 years comes, there's going to be 7 years of really good, abundant crops, and we need to plan during those first 7 years to get to the second 7 years. And Pharaoh says, that's exactly what those dreams mean. I want you to be in charge of everything. I mean, he becomes basically the prime minister of Egypt. And so the 7 years of great abundance come. He stores some up, and they're into the famine. 2 years into the famine. famine is also in Canaan, where Joseph's family is living. And his dad, Jacob, says to the sons that he has left at home, he says, go to Egypt and get some food. And they go to Egypt to get food, and Joseph sees them, and he recognizes them, and he tests them. He puts them through 2 tests. He says, I believe you're spies. You're really here just to spy out the land so that you can attack us. So I want you to go home and go through the story about how Benjamin is still back at home. He says, bring your younger brother as a test. And in fact, there's one of you guys that ends up staying there. Simeon stays there until the other brothers go and bring Benjamin back. They go, and could add a lot more to the story, but suffice it to say, they get back, they tell the story to Jacob about what's happened, and they use up all the supplies that they bought. Joseph does sell them supplies, does give them grain, and it's not until they run out of grain and they're facing the famine again that's when they say, you know what, we got to go back to Egypt and get some more. And they say to their dad, we can't go back, not without Benjamin. Because if we don't, he's not going to let any of us come back. He's going to say we are spies. And so Benjamin comes. Anyway, he does another test with them, and it's at this point where, just before chapter 45, where Chipple began reading, Joseph is starting to say, this is all over, we're done with, you guys are lying to me, and Judah says to him, keep me. If you have to keep somebody, let all my brothers go home, because if this little guy, Benjamin, doesn't get back home, my dad's going to die. I just know it. My dad's going to die. Let him go. I'll stay with you. Let my life be what you've said. And at that moment in time, Joseph gets overcome with emotion. And that's where he started out. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried, make everyone go after me. He says, I'm your brother. He says first, I am Joseph. And 22 years, it doesn't click with him, evidently. Wait a minute. Joseph who? You're an Egyptian. You can't be beating our brother. He says, no, I am your brother, Joseph. And they're worried. Catch that in the reading? They were worried. They were dismayed, I think it says. Yeah, it could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Oh, what's he going to do? Last time we saw him, we gave him up for dead. We sold him. What's he going to do? And I'm sure in all of this, has gone by that Joseph is wondering, what am I going to do? Where is this going to end? I'm sure he was thinking about it. Remember, he has been living in the Egyptian culture now for more than a couple of decades. He has been drenched in, just immersed in that culture. And I'm sure that he had different thoughts come to mind about, how am I going to deal with this? And I'm sure he was probably praying too, because before he was carried off, 17 years old, is undoubtedly getting some teaching from his father about the ways of their people and the God that they serve. He had time to think about it. And like I say, maybe months. So he could have just let it all ride, remain secret. No, I don't know you guys. Just take your food and get out of here. Knowing that there's 5 more years to come, and they're going to be back again someday. Just get out of here. I don't want to see you anymore. He could have done something even worse. He could have just refused to help them. He could have even, remember, he's prime minister. Anything he says goes. He could have put him in jail. He could have said, I'm going to give you a little bit of taste of what you gave me. He could have even had him executed. Do you think those things went through his mind? I bet they did. Somewhere, sometime. How strong they were, who knows? But I bet they were there. But instead, he's overcome with emotion. And he realizes, I need to forgive. Basically, in a word, that's what he did. I need to forgive, and I need to provide for them. And he thinks about, again, all that has transpired, and where they are right now, and how they got there. And he realizes, did you hear it? 4 times in this passage, he said, God did this. God, you didn't send me, God sent me. So verse 5 says, I am here. Verse 6 says, now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. Verse 7, and God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth. Verse 8, so it was not you who sent me here, but God. And again in verse 9, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. He wanted them to be sure that he understood it was not them, but it was him. Now, in bringing about this redemption, we see that he did 2 things, really. Number 1 is that he revealed who he was. Like I said, we've already shared about how he didn't have to do that, but he did. We could say he embraced his reality. I never planned to be here. This wasn't my idea for my life, but this is where I'm at. This is what's happening. And maybe the thought went through his mind, God, what do you want?